Hello and welcome to the Thursday, December 12th, 2024 edition of the SANS and its Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. In Diaries today, we have an interesting observation from one of our undergraduate interns. Jean-Luc Hourier did publish about scanning for vSphere vulnerabilities. vSphere, of course, has a rich history of vulnerabilities, also tends to be somewhat difficult to patch. So when about 3.5 months ago, some new vulnerabilities were being patched that actually could lead to a vSphere compromise, Jean-Luc pretty much saw initial reconnaissance scanning the day after the vulnerability became publicly known. Not only that, there were also other scans from the particular IP addresses that looked like they were zooming in somewhat on particularly this pair of vulnerabilities here in vSphere. And essentially it was added sort of as a new tool to this particular actor's tool set. They, in the past, and continue to also scan for non-VMware related vulnerabilities. And this is very, very typical where attackers have a specific bot that they can easily use to add additional vulnerabilities, in particular to scan just for the presence of the vulnerability to then later come and exploit them. So any one of these bots is typically scanning for a couple dozen or so different vulnerabilities that are then being swapped out from time to time, old ones being retired and new vulnerabilities being added. And Apple released updates for, well, everything. We got updates for iOS, iPadOS, macOS, watchOS, visionOS. So pretty much any operating system that Apple produces received updates. There were also some updates for older versions of macOS going back to Ventura 13 and also for iPadOS, interestingly, 17. Nothing for iOS 17. Overall, the vulnerabilities are really not that sort of groundbreaking. Lots of privilege escalation vulnerabilities, lots of vulnerabilities that essentially bypass some of the security boundaries of the operating system. I did see sort of one interesting remote code execution vulnerability that could be triggered by you mounting a malicious file system. That's sort of, one of those vulnerabilities that could potentially be exploited with, for example, malicious USB stick. Only 5 WebKit vulnerabilities that I could spot, and only 2 of them are memory corruption vulnerabilities that may potentially then lead to code execution. The rest just crash the system. No specific or separate Safari update at this point. Maybe that'll come later for some of the older operating systems. But as usual, upgrade as you get around to it, but there's nothing that I would say warrants sort of an immediate upgrade right now, in particular, since there are a number of additional features being added here. And the one system that I updated was actually kind of slow for a while, then probably loading all of these AI models and such that are being added. But after about 10-15 minutes or so, it was back to normal. And Huntress Labs, in a blog post from earlier this week, indicated that they saw active exploitation against a vulnerability in the Cleo software file transfer tool. There are actually 3 different pieces of software involved that are vulnerable. Cleo Lexicom, VL Transfer, and Harmony are the 3 software packages. They all are vulnerable to the same issue, which actually apparently was initially patched in October, but not patched well, and as a result is now again being exploited. The problem here is an arbitrary file write vulnerability. There is a /synchronization URL that will accept unauthenticated post requests and allows you to write arbitrary files to the server, which in itself wouldn't be that terrible if there wouldn't be an auto run directory. If you write a script to that auto run directory and that auto run directory is in scope for these arbitrary file writes, well, then you're able to execute code on the server, and that apparently is what's being exploited here. In the show notes, I'll add 2 links, one to the original Hunters Lab article, and then a second one to a more in-depth discussion of the vulnerability by Watchtower. Well, that's it for today. I'll be heading to DC for our Cyber Defense Initiative conference. I'll be teaching the Defending Web App class at that conference. If you're attending, say hi. I'll always have some stickers with me. And, talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.